Hi everyone, welcome to the Timeform Awards video for 2025. It is 2026 now, of course, but we're going to look back on last year's flat season and reveal Timeform's Horse of the Year for the flat season in 2025. To do that, I'm joined by David Johnson and Kieran Clark from Timeform to discuss each division before the Horse of the Year is revealed. We're going to go through the sprinters, the milers, the middle distance horses and the stayers before revealing just who came out on top on Timeform rankings last year. Gents, thanks for joining me. Should be an enjoyable show. We're going to go through the sprinters first, Kieran. And domestically, it seemed to me like there was a different winner of Group 1 every time that a sprint was run in Europe last year.
Yeah, I was struggling to remember the last time something went back-to-back in an open Group 1 sprint over here, and I think we have 30 horses rated above 120 that class as the sprint division. Only 3 of them are actually trained over here, and they're not really, you wouldn't class them as out-and-out sprinters. Kim Ross was one, he's now been retired. The other 3 were More Thunder, Never So Brave, and Lake Forest. They're not really, you wouldn't really class them as out-and-out sprinters. They're more 7 furlong specialists and maybe a bit further as Never So Brave comes on. So yeah, domestically, it does lack quality, and you look at 6 to 1 winner of the July Cup, 200 to 1 winner of British Champions Day, and you look how far Lazat was clear in the Sprint Cup. DJ was about £5 or £6 clear going into that race, and the Jubilee, two foreign raiders have pulled clear. So it is a division over here that does lack that bit of quality for sure.
Who came out on top then in Europe on the sprint ratings? Was it Asfura?
Yeah, it probably would have been. She obviously won the Nunthorpe. She was the only Group 1 winner going into Nunthorpe, which you don't really.
I think her rating sort of held her down a little bit because obviously being a mare, she got the allowance, so that sort of is always quite difficult to see them coming out on top. So I think the highest rated European sprinter is going to be Lazat.
That's right, yeah.
On 123, and he gets that rating from winning the Jubilee where he beat Satono Rev. The pair come in nicely clear. But it was just really unfortunate. It was a case of, it was like whose turn is it today kind of with those European sprinters, wasn't it? Like Kieran said, I think they took it in turns. Asfura was the only one that went back-to-back in any of them. And, it was a case of on any individual day, there's 7 or 8 of them that could have been the one that came out on top.
Yeah, it's crying out for someone to sort of take that division by the scruff of the neck over here, isn't it? Hopefully we might see that in 2026. But DJ, internationally, it was a completely different story.
Absolutely, yeah. Kai Ying Rising really did, in the second half of the season, in particular, really take that step forward. And a Timeform rating of 135 is a huge rating for us, for any horse, but in particular a sprinter. It's always been difficult for the sprinters to get to those really high ratings, and sort of think back to the likes of Batash and Black Caviar. A little bit earlier on, they were both rated 136, and Kai Ying Rising is very much at that kind of level now. He just looks absolutely unbeatable at home, and even went obviously down to Australia, won the Everest, beat their best sprinters, and we know how good the best of the Australian sprinters are, so he proved something there. And it's probably just a little bit of a shame that we're not going to see him come over to Europe. You can understand why not. The prize money isn't as good here as what it is down in Australia for their Everest. And
they're not bothered about prestige or the connections. They seem to be all about, well, we'll go where the prize money is. And you think about Asfura, she'd probably be like a 3rd division sprinter in Australia.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, she's never won a domestic Group 1 down in Australia, has she? And then I think she's won at least 3 over here. So, that sort of tells you that our sprinters aren't so good. But, you look at the way that he's been campaigned. He's really good in the spring. Then he had a mid-season break, and that mid-season break is basically bang in the middle of where Royal Ascot would be. So they'd have to do something different to what they did last year if they were to bring him over. So you can understand why they want to go for another $20 million in the Everest instead.
Absolutely. I mean, if just say he did come over here, there was dream prize money for him at Royal Ascot, it'd be 1 to 10 shot, wouldn't he, against our lot?
You'd back him at 1 to 10.
Okay.
It'd be a huge draw, wouldn't he? And it'd be something that we'd love to see. You know, the globalisation of flat racing is one of the great things I think that we've seen with it in the last sort of 30 years or so. And the international competition really does thrive. And it's just a bit of a shame that we don't see. You know, we can be sad as fans that we don't see it, even if we can understand why Connections are opting to do that.
Yeah, he's clearly a superstar car, Ying Rising. And Andy McLaren caught up with his trainer, David Hayes, in Sha Tin just in December.
He's the best I've trained and the best sprinter I've trained. Best I've seen. I'm a huge Black Caviar fan. He didn't see the best of him in England, of her in England, but she's an out-and-out champion, probably the best I've seen. I think at the 18-run mark, he's doing comparable things to her. And if he can continue for another 12 months, we might be able to compare him to her. And that's incredible to think you can have a horse that can be at that level.
Great to hear from David Hayes, their Car Ying Rising's trainer. And I think it goes without saying, but he's got a huge chance in the Horse of the Year running, hasn't he, David?
Well, we don't want to give anything away just yet, but
spoiler alert.
There's got to be a chance. I wouldn't rule him out, put it that way.
Okay. Very interesting. And clearly, the top of the shop when it comes to the sprinters, Car Ying Rising. Okay, moving on to the miling division, Kieran. And if I'd asked you at the end of June if Field of Gold had a chance in the Horse of the Year running, I think you'd have talked up his chances, wouldn't you, back then?
100%, yeah. He looked to have the world at his feet after Royal Ascot. Given what he did there, he actually achieved a Timeform rating of 132p there. Now he's not gone on since. He obviously finished lame in the Sussex and wasn't quite at his best on Champions Day either. So his final rating was 127, which still brought him on top of the milers in another division that had quality but not really top notch. You think like of Notable Speech, he turns up and wins these Group 1s. He's just behind 124, but there is a gap in the market there for something maybe up and coming to go and rise to that top of that miling division. I think the 4-year-olds this year could be an interesting bunch for sure, and there's definitely one up and comer in Zeus Olympios, DJ, that I know you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, it just looks a really interesting horse. It's got a bit of ground to make up on the best of the milers, definitely, but what we've seen him in so far looks really promising, and be obviously nice for Connections, who obviously the owner died recently. If they did have a really good horse to go and fly the flag for them in 2026, he might be the one.
It seems to be that there's a really good progeny of Night of Thunder coming through every year, doesn't it? When you think of economics and Ombudsman, and perhaps Zeus Olympus is the one for 2026. And the horse he beat, Opera Balla, would he stay in the miling division, do you think, for Godolphin?
I think so, yeah. I mean, he's obviously polished the form out in Dubai, didn't he, in December? So it does look pretty interesting. I'd imagine he'll be campaigned with the Carnival in mind in a bid to try and get his career back on track, because he's obviously disappointed a little bit there. But when there isn't a star horse, it makes for really interesting races, and I think that's why looking towards the Lockinge, there's 3 or 4 at least that we'll be thinking at this stage, well, if it all goes well, we could be champion miler in 2026, and Zeus Olympios is certainly one of them, I think. Yeah,
he's 123p against Field of Gold's 127, so he won't have to improve much at all.
Yeah, I like him for Carl Burke. Obviously, when we were talking about the sprinters, there was such a standout star internationally. David, what about in the miling division? We've got Voyage Bubble from Hong Kong and Janta Manta from Japan. How do they sort of match up against the European form when it comes to the figures?
Yeah, not too far behind. Voyage Bubble, I think he's on 125, and so was Janta Manta. He won the mile out in Kyoto. But Voyage Bubble, we see so often with these Hong Kong horses, they keep coming back time and time again, and we'll probably touch on Romantic Warrior as well when we talk about the middle distance horses. But I think Voyage Bubble, he won 4 Group 1s, won the Hong Kong mile out in December for the 2nd year running. And he's just like a real, very likeable, consistent horse that keeps turning up and doing his thing. And I think, he'd be a match for the best of the European horses on his day.
Okay, so bringing all of that form together internationally and domestically, who comes out on top from this division, and would they come into a discussion for Horse of the Year or not?
Yeah, just Field of Gold, he edged it. In terms of Horse of the Year, judged on what he did at Royal Ascot, you'd say yes, but judged on what he's done since, admittedly, when one of the runs you can put a line through, you'd probably say he's just going to miss out on being a leading contender for that.
I think that's a really interesting thing to consider with a horse like Field of Gold and it sort of shows you what handicapping is about, is that you're learning from these horses on a race-by-race basis. And after Royal Ascot, we thought, yes, this is a real top-notch miler. Let's see him go and improve that. He failed to do that. So what you have to do is you go back and you look back at those previous ratings and think, well, is this too high? Perhaps it is, so you pull it down. And that's what handicapping is about. It's taking from these performances, looking at what they do next time, and then adjusting back handicapping. And it's a real fundamental part of what we do on a day-to-day basis across the whole spectrum.
Okay, a fascinating division, but probably not in the Horse of the Year mix, but really looking forward to seeing the milers in 2026 and seeing who can develop and perhaps take the division by the scruff of the neck. Okay, let's move on to the middle distance horses, and this is always one of the best sort of divisions to talk about, isn't it? Because we've got so many top class races, and we saw that last year in races like the King George and the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe, and obviously one set of colours came to the fore, and that was the Aga Khans, thanks to Calandagan and Darries, and they must be very high towards the top of the ratings, DJ.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, looking through the list, the strength and depth in this division in particular, I mean, certainly compared to the milers, and Calandagan tops them with a rating of 133, Dorries 131, Ombudsman 130, Delacroix, all these horses tie in together, don't they, on 129. Masquerade Ball 129, Romantic Warrior 129, and even a couple of horses that have been out in America get a sort of quite close in touch as well. Sovereignty on the dirt and Forever Young on the dirt 129 and 128. So lots to go at here, lots of interesting horses and performances that really did light up the season for us.
Yeah, and one of those was in the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe, wasn't it, when Darries beat Mini Hawk in what was one of the races of the season, the way those two pulled clear at the end of a mile and a half at Longchamp. Yeah,
unsurprisingly, she would be the champion. Filly Mare, Mini Hawk, rating of 127, £4 clear of Calpana, and you think internationally, Via Sestina, she at her peak she was 132, she's now 122. Just what she showed in 2025 suggests that she's now just turned 8. She's still a very, very good horse, but is she just a little bit past her best? And who'd have thought when they sold her from the UK that for all that money they'd come out on the worst part of the deal? But yeah, Mini Hawk, she looked like she'd won the arc, didn't she, when she kicked for home? But she's got chinned by Darries, and it'll be really interesting in 2026 how they campaign. Darries, who's still an entire, and Calandagan, who is a gelding. Now you'd think that another route back to the arc would be the way to go with Darries, but it depends what kind of sire they want to make him into. Are they gonna stay at a mile and a half, or they're going to drop back to a mile and a quarter within? Makes you wonder.
It's going to be really interesting to see, isn't it? Because they've got all these options, and obviously we've had news recently of the extra prize money that they're throwing at the Coronation Cup. I think the King George is going to be worth more. The Judmont International has got a prize increase in their prize fund as well. I mean, you sort of forget that Darry's already had a go in the Judmont International after the way he performed, don't you? So maybe they'll want to right that wrong. But there's so many options for all these horses. And just to touch on Mini Hawk, 127, like Kieran said, that makes her the champion filly and mare in Timeform's opinion. And you look back to some of the other fillies and mares that Aidan O'Brien's trained, that 127 rating has a not far off his very best. Found, she was an ARC winner, she was 129. Magical 128, she was obviously a winner against the males on a few occasions as well. So Mini Hawk on 127, she's right up at that kind of level along with Minding. So I think she stays in training as well, doesn't she, as a 4-year-old?
Really
so hopefully we can all hope at this stage, whether they get there and they're quite as good as what they were as the previous year. It doesn't always work out, does it? But fingers crossed, we'll see her in the very best races next year.
Yeah, every chance she could be Aidan O'Brien's best ever mare then in 2026 if she improves again from last year.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing with her is so many times the way that she ran, she just sort of seemed to run to the company that she was keeping. She was hard work to win the Cheshire Oaks and took a huge step up again when she won the Oaks. Significant that she was Ryan Moore's choice there, even when Whirl was the Musidora winner that had got much better form. But and then obviously she took her form up another notch in the Yorkshire Oaks and that big career best in the Arc. So we can forgive, I think, the Breeders' Cup. To be honest, I'd forgot that she'd run in it until I was doing the research for this the other day. End of a long season, tight track. Yeah, there's lots of reasons why she might not have given a run in there, but she could easily. If she goes and wins an Arc, that 129 from Found would definitely be under close scrutiny.
Just touching on Breeders' Cup, one horse we didn't see there was Sovereignty. Now he had a excellent season. He obviously won 2 legs of the Triple Crown, still unbeaten. He won the Travers. He missed the Breeders' Cup Classic because he had a mild fever a couple of days before, I think it was. I would be shocked if he's not bang up there in the 2026 middle distance category, because he's still not really had the chance to show what he can do against older horses. He's only taken on his own age group so far. And yeah, I think he's very, very exciting.
I think that's an important point to make about the ratings, is it's not just a case of ability, but you need that opportunity. And I mean, he did win the Travers by 10 lengths, but it wasn't a race at that stage you really would be confident taking a high view of. And the fact that he didn't get to run in the Breeders' Cup Classic does sort of tell you that he didn't have the chance to run to that real high rating. But like Kieran says, if he does come back and shows that whatever caused him to miss the Breeders' Cup hasn't any long-term negative benefits, then yeah, he could easily break that 130 barrier next year.
It's always interesting as well, isn't it, to see how the American dirt horses match up in terms of ratings with the best European turf horses, just to sort of settle once and for all who is the best horse on the planet. And we might see that with Sovereignty.
Yeah, sorry, but I was just going to say, to make that point, we're quite fortunate this year that we had Forever Young, that obviously won the Classic. His form tied in from earlier in the season with Romantic Warrior, who was swapping turf and dirt. So it's not often that the two form lines conflate very much, because you tend to get dirt specialists and turf specialists. And we saw last year when City of Troy had to go on the dirt, it's very difficult for horses to be able to produce their best on both surfaces. So really interesting from Romantic Warrior that he could, and I think his rating of 129 basically still as good as ever. I think he's an 8-year-old now, and records for prize money and everything he's already set. So yeah, just a real top-notch horse he is.
You spoke about the strength in depth in the division, David, and this is probably a good chance to announce the race of the year, because there was a day last year where several strands of form came together.
Exactly, yeah. Probably no huge surprise to know that we're talking about the Champion Stakes at Ascot, and that was where Calandagan really did announce himself as that real top-class horse that we really hoped and thought he would be. Sort of see here, it was so interesting because the 3 main contenders were all out the back, and Ombudsman makes his first bid, but Calandagan is able to go with him. And then even sort of from 2 furlongs out, it's a real sort of set to between them. They're both coming through. You're not sure which one's going to get it. And then a furlong out, Calandagan says, well, I'm just going to keep going. Are you coming with me? And Ombudsman, as good as he's been, as good a season that he had, winning the Prince of Wales impressively, winning the Juddmonte International, Calandagan did take that step forward and showed himself a real top-class performer there. Delacroix, obviously, I think was in 4th in the end. Couldn't quite run up to the level that he'd shown back in Ireland in the Irish Champion Stakes. But this really was the race of the year. It's one of those where it looked a real good race coming into it, and so often when that happens, they don't live up to their billing, do they? But fortunately, this did, and obviously Calandagan, what he did here was really good, but then to go and not quite top it, but at least go and do something almost as good in the Japan Cup, and it's one of those performances there where the rating doesn't tell the full story. He got the 133 this day, And I think he only ran to 128, 129 or so in the Japan Cup. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, he's gone and done it over there at the end of a long season. And when you think this is a horse that after the Coronation Cup, me and others were questioning whether he really had the guts for it and whether he wanted to battle. And then you see him win the Japan Cup like he did. It was, a real tough performance. And he turned his season around in real good style.
And out in Hong Kong, Andy McLaren caught up with Francis Henri Graffard to talk about Calandagan.
I think he's smart, and his mechanic is not an overweight horse, and the mechanic of the horse is really very well balanced. Everything is easy for him, and he has this very long acceleration that he can maintain for a long distance. So it's special.
We're often guessing, aren't we, how European form fits in internationally. We don't often we do see horses race against each other from other jurisdictions, but for him to go out to Japan and beat, we know how strong the Japanese middle distance horses are. It really does strengthen his position, doesn't it, in the global rankings? Absolutely,
yeah. And it's one of them cases where the rating doesn't do him justice. Like I say, he got that 133. That was never really up for dispute. But the fact that he's gone and produced that fourth Group 1 at the end of the season and done it in the style that he did, it's a real good performance to go and see.
We're very lucky he's gelded, aren't we? Because he's going to keep coming back for as long as I think he's good enough. So he could end up with a real roll of honour if he carries on the way he is.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? You think back, if he hadn't been gelded, he'd have probably, having won the King George, the plan would have been the Arc for him. And would De Ries, who obviously went and won the King George, won the Arc, would he have even run in the race?
Probably not.
Yeah. We're fortunate that they both stay in training, yeah.
So in a strong division, Calandagan comes out on top.
He does, yeah.
He must have a shout in Horse of the Year.
Absolutely, yeah. Sort of in terms of an average year, you'd already be crowning him. But obviously, there's a big debate to be had between him and Car Ying Rising.
We shall see who comes out on top shortly. On to the stay-in division, the 2 milers and the 2.5 milers. And I think this will be a fairly quick discussion because it's all about Trawlerman, isn't it? He's 4 from 4 domestically and just dominated the stay-in division. Yeah,
it would have been all about Kyprios, but obviously he was retired. And step forward Trawlerman, who's just, like you say, he's been bossing the division. He obviously won the Ascot Gold Cup. He went to York, the replay we're going to see, where he won the Lonsdale beats.
And that day in the Lonsdale, if there was a day he was ever going to be vulnerable, it was 2 miles,
quick ground,
speedy track, quick ground, and he still won. It sort of just enforces his dominance, doesn't it?
It did, yeah. He pressed on early enough in the straight and enforces dominance over Sweet William, who usually gets beat by him and then goes to Doncaster and wins the Doncaster Cup. In terms of ratings, he's 127 Trawlerman, and he is, from the older horses, he would be the standout stayer. It does, in terms of opposition for next season, it's quite interesting because I thought I was lucky enough to be at Doncaster when the St Ledger was on. I thought they were a really quality looking bunch in the preliminaries, and we've obviously got Scandinavia, who's already won a Goodwood Cup. He's a strong stayer. I think the same connections will probably try and turn Illinois into a stayer. They'll probably have another go at that as well. Scandinavia's 1-2-3, Illinois 1-2-2, and the St Ledger runner-up is 120 Rahib. I think even longer trips will suit him as well. But I do think it's going to be Trawlerman versus Scandinavia in the staying division for this coming season. But in terms of what they produced in 2025, he's definitely a standout.
Okay.
It's just a question for 2026 whether age does catch up with Trawlerman, isn't it? Obviously 7 into 8. You do think obviously this year was the year that he was going to be at his absolute peak, and he didn't half make hay as a result.
Yeah, fantastic stayer, Trawlerman. But when it comes to Horse of the Year, I'm guessing he didn't really get a look in with Car Ying Rising and Calandagan to go up against.
No, it's very difficult, isn't it, to really put high ratings on some of these stayers. There just isn't the strength and depth in that division, and it's almost they're they end up in the staying division to a certain extent because they're not quite good enough over middle distances, don't they? And 127, 128, that kind of level isn't going to be impacting the horse of the year, I don't think.
Well, it's time for the big reveal. Who is Timeform's Horse of the Year? We've got two contenders that we've seen from the last 20 minutes or so, Kieran Rising from the sprint division and Calandagan from the middle distance horses. But who comes out on top?
Yeah, it's Kieran Rising. It's that rating of 135 that beats the rating of 133. Kieran Rising, he spent the season unbeaten, didn't he? He looked he was impossible to beat, wasn't he, on home soil, and then went and did it abroad as well. And you just can't knock what he's done as much as, you just look at the way that he's doing it as well. The style is there as well as the substance. And just really, really impressive, everything that he's done. This performance that we're watching back now, this is the day that Timeform put that 135 rating on him back in September, where he beats Lucky Swain-S. I think he gives him an £18 beating. Now, this Lucky Swain-S a couple of years ago was winning Group 1s himself. Now, he's not at that level, but this was the day that you could see that 135, yes, on any given day, he could run to higher than that if his jockey really, really wanted. I keep saying it, I find it annoying, these jockeys, they keep riding them to win good races, not to run to good ratings.
Think of the ratings.
Exactly.
It's
Make
not
my life
well, that was handicapping
easier.
if he didn't want to win too far.
That's it, yeah. So my job would be much easier if he'd ride him out to the line all the time. But we do need to touch on Calandagan, because last year, City of Troy was Horse of the Year with a rating of 130 and won 3 Group 1s. Calandagan doesn't get the accolade this year, yet he's won 4 Group 1s and is rated 133. So in any normal year, he'd be a very deserving winner, but he's just been unfortunate that in 2025 he's come up against a real top-notcher in Kieran Rising. Is
it an easy decision? Is it black and white because you've got a 135 horse against a 133 horse? Or, like you were saying, Calandagan could have maybe got his rating a bit higher. Like, even in the Japan Cup, he was. You were saying he was a bit unlucky almost not to rate a higher figure. Yeah, it wasn't black and white at all. And like I say, it's where when you're crowning a Horse of the Year, it is about more than just those bare ratings, because the bare rating is just that horse at its best on any individual day, whereas a Horse of the Year, it's what they've done throughout the whole season. Always think back in 2023 when 2003 it was, when Hawkwing was Timeform's highest rated horse, when he won the Lockinge by, I think it was 11 lengths, but then he bombed out on his only other start and was retired. Falbrav was rated lower than Hawkwing back then, but he was definitely the Horse of the Year because of the races that he ran in and won. And I think Calandagan, like I say, he'd have been a fully deserving winner in virtually any year. He's just been really unlucky that he's run into a horse that had a higher rating, that was also unbeaten, and didn't just stay at home himself. He did obviously go down to Australia and win the Everest. So, just 2 real top-notch horses that, because they're geldings, we're lucky that we'll see in 2026 again too. Let's just have a look at a couple of the 2-year-olds from 2025, and we can turn it into 3-year-olds this year. Who are we going to be looking out for, Kieran?
Yeah, I think it's wide open in terms of the juveniles who are turning 3. Usually, if you champion juvenile, you've run to at least 120, maybe a little bit higher. And Gowan, the Dewhurst winner, he's taken exactly the same path as Chaldean up to now. The difference was that he got beat at Doncaster, which meant he went off 25-1 to win the Dewhurst, which I think we're going to see. And he came out and won that, and came out on top of the 2-year-olds, rated 118.
And he did well here, didn't he? Because he was bouncing back from
Doncaster, and he didn't really have any. I was there that day, and he didn't really have any excuses. He got beat by Puerto Rico, who went and won a Group 1 in...
It was hot form, wasn't it?
It was. It worked out really well. Cape Orator was in there as well for Rafe Beckett. Now, he does get the rail, which is often favoured at Newmarket, and I just came away from the Dewhurst thinking he deserves to be top 2-year-old, but I won't be surprised if we see something improved past him. We've got 11 horses within £4 of that 118, and it's 10-1 the field anti-post for the Guineas. When was the last time that happened? Horses like Gustardo only have a couple of pounds to find. And, it's in terms of the colts, it's wide open. In terms of the fillies, I think we saw a couple of potentially very good fillies from the Ballydoyle stable, did you?
Yeah, exactly. I think watching the Fillies Mile here, and is it Precise that comes out on top? She's got a rating of 113p. We're used to the fillies lagging behind the colts. I think 113p for a Fillies Mile winner is pretty much bang up with what you would expect.
Standard,
I think that kind of figure is often good enough to win a 1,000 guineas, and it's just that debate that we've got now that has surfaced over the last 2 or 3 years about Aidan O'Brien's horses, about whether they're forward enough to win a Guineas. It's become a bit of a talking point, hasn't it? It's a while since he's won the races that he used to dominate, but
usually finish about last to win a derby, don't they?
That's it, yeah, exactly. But Precise, obviously, she's unbeaten and looks really good there.
You'd think she's right favourite for the Guineas. She's probably going to take all the beating if she gets there on good terms, as DJ said. And the other one that was really exciting that won is it Marcel Boussac?
Yeah, that's right.
Was Diamond Necklace. She's rated 109p. Might as well shoehorn into champion first season Sire, which was St Mark's Basilica, who obviously did plenty of his winning in France. I think he won an Eclipse as well. I think. Is that right?
Yeah, did he win the French 2000 Guineas and French Derby,
didn't he? Yeah. She'd be a real Oaks contender, I think. Now, whether it's an Oaks over here or a French Oaks, I'm not too sure. But
she's bred for the mile and a half, isn't she?
Yeah, she is. Yeah, and she really impressed me in France because the horse that was second, I thought she'd get done for speed by her, and the runner-up's quick and clear, and she's found a gear to go past her, and she was very impressive. Really good first season for St Mark's Basilica. He had the May Hill winner in Carl Burke's filly, Ailin, as well. And he's got a nice 3-year-old called Pathine that won at the Ledger meeting, won a maiden, pulled clear with a nice horse of Rafe Beckett's. Things didn't quite go to plan in the Royal Lodge since, but he could be potentially one of the best horses Ed Dunlop's had for a while. Just a really solid start for St Mark's Basilica in what's going to be a big year for Colmar, with obviously the loss of Wootton Bassett in 2025. They'll be searching for that next superstar Sire as well.
Yeah, we're sat here recording this in the cold depths of winter, and it's not hard to start dreaming of the Craven and looking forward to the spring, is it?
Yeah, we're already looking forward to that. Good to reflect on the 2-year-olds there, Kieran. We've given out Horse of the Year to Kaying Rising, but we'll finish, DJ, with a special award, an Outstanding Achievement Award. And who gets this?
Yeah, well, just briefly outline the idea behind an award like this. It's sort of thinking back to 2026, and trainers that aren't necessarily winning big Group 1s all the time, but something that they're doing that's really special, that's really interesting and deserves to be recognised. And I think Jim Goldie definitely needs to be discussed in greater detail, because he had that first Group 1 in his career with American Affair, the first time that he's trained over 100 winners. I think he set a record level for prize money, but it's just a real quirky stat as well with his horses, and I'm going to have to just check my notes to make sure I get it right, but there's 7 UK flat horses that won 7 or more races, and remarkably Jim Goldie was responsible for 4 of them. Midnight Lion, Oriental Prince, Janna's Journey and Dwindling Funds. They all won, like I say, 7 races each individually. And
he had another 4 that won 4 or 5 as well.
Yeah, exactly. The way that he dominated that horse list is just remarkable, and just thought it was something that wanted pointing out. A trainer that's just doesn't necessarily do it in the spotlight in the way that some of the big yards do, but a yard that is still very much going places and has achieved something special in 2026.
And they all peak at like 5 and 6, don't they? If you get a Jim Goldie 3-year-old that's shown a bit, you kind of think, going back to the likes of American Affair and Hawkeye, when they got to 4 and 5, they really blossomed. And
yeah, exactly.
And it's a shame we didn't see American Affair after Ascot.
Particularly when we've just discussed about the deal with the sprint division in this country. It would have been really interesting to see how he would have gone, certainly in the Nunthorpe. I mean, I think as time went on, he'd obviously won over 6 earlier in his career, but 5 furlongs, I think, is his optimum, and hopefully he'll be back from injury in 2026 as well.
Yeah, fantastic trainer Jim Golding did a remarkable job with American Affair, and plenty of other horses, like you say, and well deserving of that outstanding achievement award. Well, time has beaten us. Thank you for joining us. Ka Ying Rising confirmed as Timeform's Horse of the Year in 2025, and we're all looking forward to the flat season in 2026 and seeing what new stars can come on to the landscape.